Just a heads up, this is going to be a quick review, so the editing is going to be a bit on the lazy side. So, the new Sakura Wars game is finally out, and after doing 2 whole videos in the series in preparation for this game, it only seems fair that I do a quick review. For this review, I want to look at the game from 3 angles. The first is story. For a game which is part visual novel, how well does this game's story do at keeping the player interested? The second is presentation. This will mainly focus on the dialogue sections of the game, and how well the game handles its choice-based dialogue mechanics, as well as how the game looks and feels. And the third is battle. As a game about fighting demons threatening the city, how enjoyable are the combat sections of the game? I also want to compare the 3 angles of the previous games in the series, most notably Sakura Wars 5, the last game before this one. As a sequel 15 years in the making, how well does this game live up to the Sakura Wars name, and is it truly the series revival fans are hoping for? So let's look at the first angle, story. Sakura Wars' story takes place back in Tokyo, 10 years after a cataclysmic event wipes out the combat reviews of the previous games. As a result, we have almost an entirely brand new cast. Not to go into too much detail, the plot is very much a passing the torch story, which the game's cast attempt to live up to the legacy of the characters of games past, just like Star Wars, except Sakura Wars actually does a good job in the execution of this plot. The story isn't perfect though. The villains are kind of weak, however that seems to be a flaw with most of the Sakura Wars games. What isn't a flaw in the other games is giving all the female cast adequate time in the spotlight. Previous games gave plenty of time to get to know each cast member, such that the one you chose at the end was an open choice. However, here a little too much time is given to the titular character of Sakura Amamiya, to the point where choosing someone other than her for the finale seems wrong. Some might also be annoyed at the lack of returning characters, with only Sumire Kanzaki and Sakura Shinjuji, being the only characters to reappear in this game. However, as someone who has only played Sakura Wars 1 and 5 beforehand, I was kinda used to having completely different casts in my Sakura Wars games. Either way, I really enjoyed the plot. Not to sell the previous game's stories short, I would argue this game has the best plot out of the 3 current games I have played. This is due to a more narrative-driven plot that isn't solely driven by the main characters. However, a good story can be ruined by bad presentation and gameplay. Trust me, I've played Xenosaga 1 and 2. The first most notable difference when comparing this game with the games prior is the move to 3D models and environments, abandoning the previous 2D presentation style. As an attempt to modernise the game for a current generation, this move makes sense. The move also allows for more freedom in the visual department, as you can now see the characters do things, such as get into fights and run off, as opposed to having it implied through audio and visual effects. However, a drawback to the full 3D style occurs in situations where the character is not performing any major actions, and will instead shudder or bob around in some janky animations. These made me chuckle a bit, but I got used to it. Another change that took some getting used to was the new character designs. Kosuke Fujishima, of Tales series fame, is no longer designing the characters, and instead we have Tide Kubo, of Bleach fame, making his first foray into video games as the designer of the main characters. Now, I don't want to discredit the job Kubo has done on the main characters, but during my playthrough my eyes were frequently drawn to the side characters, who are done by a variety of guest artists. So watching the situation when you have the designer of Bleach, an anime I never particularly got into, and put him up against the designers of K-On!, Girls and Panzers, and Haruhi Suzumiya, animes I have much more enjoyment in watching, it's hard to appreciate his work as much. Altogether, the character designs are great, and I think I can get used to the new looks for the hopeful future entries. Speaking about the characters, I do like the increase in the amount of side characters. Previous Sakura Wars games were normally limited to the main cast, plus 5 or so other theatre members, 5 or so villains, and maybe a couple of city folk. However, here we do not only have that, we also have the visiting members of 3 other combat reviews joining the cast, making this the largest cast size I have seen in a Sakura Wars game. This gives the game a much bigger sense of scale compared to the other games I have played. The music has also seen major improvements. Sakura Wars 5's soundtrack was quite average, with most of the pieces consisting of MIDI brass tracks that, while had the right tones, were not really that good. Hell, even the game's main theme, Warriors of the Earth, is in my opinion the lamest of all the opening songs. Not only does Sakura Wars return to the amazing classic theme of Attack, Imperial Assault Troop, with a few additions to spice it up, it also has a soundtrack that is much more enjoyable to listen to with a large variety of pieces that I'll be likely listening to for years to come. Despite all the changes, this game is still very much a Sakura Wars game. For most of the game, you'll be wandering around the theatre home base, as well as several select locations around Tokyo. Dialogue still sees you use the live and interactive picture, or LIPS, system, in which you'll be required to respond to dialogue and events in a short amount of time. These responses will impact the morale of the characters around you, and by improving this morale you will get benefits in the battle sections of the game. However, the battle sections of the game is where I stop praising Sakura Wars. For its entire history, Sakura Wars has always been a turn-based strategy game, a genre I love, with the likes of Fire Emblem and Valkyria Chronicles being some of my favourite series, up there with the Xeno series. However, this game decides to abandon that style of gameplay for a hack and slash, a genre I do not like. Just talk to me about my opinions on Fire Emblem Warriors. I was already worried going into this game when the first battle section trailers came out in the lead up to this game's release, and unfortunately my fears were realised. When playing Sakura Wars 1 and 5, I could see how the former evolves into the latter. However, the same cannot be said about this game. The game seems to have none of the elements from the previous game's battle system. The ability to defend or heal is gone. You no longer need to choose when to move versus when to attack, and you no longer have access to all party members at once. Instead, what you get is a lame button mashing fest as you spam attacks into hordes of enemies with little regard for your own safety. Gone are the days of being punished for rushing headfirst into enemy lines. Instead, we have hordes of enemies that you can crush with little effort, even if you fail to raise the morale of your allies. The only two features that have returned from the previous game, if I can even say that, are the special and pair-up attacks. Special attacks still come from filling a gauge, however the gauge isn't filled via resting or taking damage, instead you collect orbs dropped from enemies. There are also other orbs for regaining health. Special attacks are fun to shoot off and are arguably one of the few parts of the battle system I like. Pair-up attacks no longer work in the same way they did in Sakura Wars 5. They are now basically a temporary invincibility buff you can activate in battle with one other character. Another problem I have with this new battle system are the locations you fight in. You think that a game about defending Tokyo would have battles taking place around the city, but outside of the few battles around the theatre, we are for the most part fighting in these demon domains, which consist of several arenas with connecting paths. These locales are super generic, and could have come from any demon fighting hack and slash game. Compare this with Sakura Wars 5, which had you battling around multiple New York landmarks, each with unique map designs. On the bright side, the battle system is a small blight and an otherwise great comeback for one of my favourite game series. And at the end of the day, you play Sakura Wars to enjoy the interactive story, and for the most part that's exactly what you get in this game. If I was to give some advice on how to improve a possible sequel, I'd probably say to include more of the tactical elements from the previous game's battle system, have more battles occur in and around the city, make sure all the female characters get adequate time in the spotlight, and bring back some more familiar faces as a lot of fans really want to see where their favourite characters are at. On a personal level, I would like to see the setting move to another locale. After 4 of the 6 games taking place in Tokyo, I am really keen to see other cities. And thanks to the introduction of 3 other combat reviews in this game, we even have a launching point for potential new locations. And even if they do stay in Tokyo for the next game's location, I am really excited to see where the new story will go. And while we hopefully wait for a 7th entry in the series, maybe Sega will finally get the motivation to bring over the first 4 games to the West as well. So, despite lame battle sections, I give this game a positive review and hope that it brings the series revival. In the meantime, I'm going to continue watching the concurrent anime as well as finishing off the fan-translated Sakura Wars 1.